this next session with Sundays with Hank. Hank loved baseball. It was his life. Any size or shaped person could play baseball. I'm sure that's why Hank loved it so much. You didn't have to be special to play. It was an ordinary person's game and still is. Hank was always in pursuit of the perfect swing. He would tell us that a good swing was like chopping wood. "Swing down on the ball," he would say. Hank would always say, "Shift your weight from back foot to front foot as you swing. Keep your eyes on the ball. Don't pull your head. Keep it down on the ball. Don't step too far with that front foot. Step toward the pitcher. Don't step out. Use your wrist." Hank would always look at the size of your wrist. He thought that the wrist size translated into the power and speed of your swing. Once he cut out a full-page spread from a newspaper that showed Willie Horton's swing in stages from beginning to end. Willie was a great hitter from the Detroit Tigers. He made it a point to unfold it and show it to me on a few different occasions. As I said, he liked to study everyone's swing. He even knew, he watched me close enough that he told me one day, he says, "Charlie, you shut your eyes just as the ball is about to hit your bat." Sure enough, I checked, and that's what I was doing. He was constantly coming up with new gadgets or ideas to help with hitting. Hank would go to the local hardware store and have the center drilled out of a baseball. They would then put a nylon cord through the ball and tie a knot and burn both the knot and the other end so that it wouldn't fray, like nylon cord tends to do. So Hank would leave the store with a baseball on a cord. He brought me one of those on at least one occasion. He drove up in his old Kelly Green Ford. Each time I would see him pull up in the driveway, I'd get a surge of pride through me, and I'm sure my mom and dad didn't have that same surge of pride. I thought, he's paying attention to me, and he thinks maybe I have some potential. Me, the kid with the small wrists, he said, "You're going to have to build those wrists up, Charlie, or you're never going to be able to hit a ball." He would begin my hitting lesson by showing me how to attack the ball. "Chop down, just like chopping wood," he would say. He would stammer. Eyes would blink. He would raise his front leg and put it down with authority and grit his teeth around that unlit cigar just as he swung the bat down in a chopping manner. He would say, "Imagine a pitcher pitching you the ball. I'll tell you one darn thing." He would always say that phrase. He would say that a lot. "I'll tell you one darn thing," when he was emphasizing or lamenting about something. "Practice swinging, keep practicing," he would say. Then he'd take me outside and we would put the baseball on a cord on Mom's clothesline, which I thought was a little bit dangerous. I was kind of scared to try it. He would proceed to show me how to practice with it. He would grit his teeth around that ever-present unlit cigar, lift his leg high in the air, his left leg high in the air, and take a vicious swing. The ball would twirl around the clothesline, almost hit him. I stepped back out of the way. Then he would proceed to untie the cord from the clothesline and tell me where I could get one made. See, Hank wasn't going to leave me that one. He didn't have much money, so one baseball with a cord through it was like gold to him. He wasn't about to go around handing those out like candy. Hank wanted us to want one bad enough that we would go to the hardware store and buy one on our own. Another idea Hank came up with was swinging an old broom handle. He would have someone throw hickory nuts to him, and he would try to hit them with that broom handle. I guess he figured if you could hit something smaller while swinging an even smaller stick for a bat, then hitting a baseball might prove to be much easier. It always made me think of the stickball games of the big cities. About the other aspects of baseball, Hank would speak of them, but not as much as he would about hitting. He would tell us to be aggressive on the base paths and to stay down on ground balls. He would also tell us to catch the ball with two hands. Hank even came up with an idea on how to break in a new ball glove, I think if I remember correctly. We would soak our new glove in a bucket of water, and Alan Teffeteller told me this one. To get the proper shape, we would put a ball in a glove and then tie a string around it before dropping it into the bucket. We let the glove soak overnight, and the next day we would have a glove with a perfect shape and a ball that was probably waterlogged and ruined. I, like many other kids, took great pride in owning a new ball glove, the rawhide smell, the whole newness of the glove. We knew each glove had to go through the break-in phase of hours of pitch and catch and catching fly balls and ground balls, but to soak a brand new glove in a bucket of water, well, that seemed to go against the religion of baseball. It did work, though, and eventually the glove would dry out. I think we also put some kind of grease on it to help with the leather after being in a bucket of water overnight. Hitting was Hank's favorite topic, but he also talked of throwing and building the arm up. Most of all, he would talk about throwing with accuracy. He would show us out at the athletic field how to work on our accuracy. He would take a bucket of baseballs and throw at the brick field house. He would aim for a certain brick and hit it with dead-eye accuracy. Of course, a brick wall didn't do much for the cover of a good baseball, so our coach didn't appreciate this idea very much, and our mothers probably wouldn't want us to throw a ball against the house or any other building at home. Hank was a baseball fanatic, a baseball junkie, but not about facts or statistics. He would say the same things over and over again, so much it drove most adults crazy, and they acted like they didn't even want to listen to him, which would make him mad, and sometimes he would stomp off for a while. Hank wanted so badly to coach the American Legion baseball team, but no one would let him. He was, though, pretty good at asking the Legion and local businesses for money for the team. I think they gave him money just to get rid of him. Each year the Legion team would take a trip to a Cardinal ball game, usually on Labor Day, and Hank would raise some money to help the team pay for the trip. This also ensured him a spot to go on the trip because he was not an official coach. One Cardinal trip has stuck out in my mind for years. I was about 10 or 11 years old. I'm not sure what year it was, but I think it was 63 or 64. We usually got tickets for a doubleheader, and if I remember correctly, this time was no different. As this trip unfolded, George Edmonds and I think his brothers, the Edmonds brothers, made trips to St. Louis a lot to ball games, and George was there that day with the Legion team, or maybe just with his brothers, but he was sitting with us. Anyway, he was there, and he made a bet with Jim Burns that George, would run out onto the field and shake Curt Flood, the center fielder of the Cardinals, shake Curt Flood's hand. Well, Jim Burns was either in his last year of Legion baseball or was with the Edmonds brothers, not sure. And just a little bit of a side story here on Jim. Jim Burns played basketball for the Foxes when they won 4th place at state, when the Illinois State Tournament was only a one-class system. He also played basketball at Northwestern University and was drafted into the NBA, and I believe was with the Chicago Bulls organization for a while. Jim then pursued a law degree and has practiced in Northern Illinois. He has been a special prosecutor from Chicago, or near Chicago, and has run for lieutenant governor. And he also was a Democratic challenger to Glenn Pritchard for governor, but lost the Democratic race to him. He, at the time I was writing this, which was about 10 years ago, or 15 years ago, has been appointed by Governor George Ryan as a special prosecutor. And anyway, back to the bet. Jim bet George $1 that he would not shake Curt Flood's hand. Remember, the catch that Willie Mays made on the fly ball that Vic Wertz hit in the 1950s? Willie made a catch with his back to the playing field. Willie was running, he was a center fielder, running towards the center field wall, made an over-the-head catch of Vic Wertz's long fly ball as he raced toward the wall. Well, Curt Flood actually made a similar catch in the game that we were there watching. Before we all knew it, after the catch, George had climbed over the right field wall and was running toward Curt Flood. Security started racing after George from all directions. He reached Curt Flood, stuck out his hand to congratulate him, and Curt shook his head no. He was going to congratulate him on that fantastic catch. And then finally, Curt had waved him off and told him to leave, but then all of a sudden, Mr. Flood smiled and gave him a handshake that George will always remember. George was sky high with a grin from ear to ear and didn't mind at all being led off the field by security. He had won the bet. And at the time, I didn't know whether Jim paid off, but I talked to George in the last couple of years out at Teffelteller's or at McDonald's, and I asked him, I said, what about that bet? And he said, I still have the dollar bill. Well, Jim Burns came here to announce his candidacy for governor a few years back against Glenn Pritchard for the Democratic nomination. And he did this in the old high school gym or the old high school auditorium. And after it was over, he was walking down the aisle, and I shook his hand, and I knew he didn't have much time, so I said real quickly, Curt Flood, Cardinal ball game, dollar bet with George Edmonds. And he stopped. And he looked at me and he says, were you there? And I said, yeah, I was there. I was either the bat boy on the team or it was because my brother Rod played for the Legion team, but I got to go, and Dad was helping Coach Dick Otten with the team. And we stood and talked about it for a little bit. Hank would show up at the younger league games too. It was kind of scary to find younger kids and their It was kind of scary to the younger kids and their coaches though. But by the time the kids and coaches had gone through all the leagues before reaching the level of American Legion baseball, they all knew Hank and thought he was harmless. Hank's patience at times was very thin. He would go to great lengths to get a game in after a big rain, and others would automatically cancel the game and say the field was too wet to play on. Well, Hank would find out a way to get that game played. He would find a rake and would try to find new dirt to cover the low areas where it would be the muddiest. But the best one of all was when Hank would take drastic measures to get the game in. Karl Mock, in his introduction to all this that I read a couple of weeks ago, mentioned about the gasoline on the field. Chuck Hamilton, a friend of mine, that old ball-playing buddy, commented on that post that he was actually there that day that Hank set the field on fire with gasoline. Well, anyway, Hank wanted to get the game in, so he thought, gasoline. He poured gasoline all over the field and then lit it. And then someone else in just the last few days said that they had seen Hank do this on a few other occasions. Well, I don't know if it worked. I guess it did if he tried it more than once, but I would think it would have charred the field and it would have taken days again to get the game in and get the field in shape to be able to play. Well, that's all for this session of Sundays with Hank. I hope you enjoyed it. I'm doing this to kind of get my mind off this COVID-19 crisis, and I hope it gives you a little bit of time to get your mind off of it too.